show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Are you ready? It's showtime.
Hello, guys. Welcome back for another one of our Thursday live sessions. It's me, James Adeleke, Chief Executive of an amazing international social enterprise called Generation Success. If you don't know, we're all about leveling the playing field into industry, allowing people to fulfill their potential in partnership with 65 employers across the UK and Ireland. Woo! Now, I'm just going to give a few minutes for people to come on the live. So do like, do comment, do share, because it's about to go down. I've got two amazing guests, which I cannot wait to introduce to you. So because of that, I'm going to take you into our Generation Success world, because we're all family. We are all family. So welcome to our world, because for the next half an hour to an hour, we have got you. We've got your attention. It's going to be an amazing live session. Let's go to the small room, because I love the small room. Okay, so please do like, do comment, do share, because these sessions are all about providing everyone who sees it the thinking tools to achieving their best selves. It's about enabling you to identify, be aware. It's about enabling you to be aware, identify, and create interventions to enable you to be your best self. And today I'm really excited because we've got some amazing guests who are experts in their fields. So we've got Jane Morris, who is the UK's leading burnout coach. She's an author of Burnout to Brilliance with over 12 years of experience facilitating workshops, courses, and retreats. And alongside her, we've got Dylan Cox, who's highly experienced wellbeing mentor and coach. He's the Art of Balance podcast producer and co-host. Oh my days, are you guys in for a store? Before I read the name, I just want to play the video. Hey!
All the way, I'm going. Yeah, my blood is rebel, I'm going.
So, Jane and Dylan, I say welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
What an intro.
Love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
We'll fired up now.
Yes, I'm glad. I mean, do you guys want to share with the audience what we're here to discuss today?
Sure. Well, we're here really to have a conversation around the topic of burnout, which if it was 10 years ago when you and I first had conversations of this nature, it was a topic that people really didn't know much about. They didn't really appreciate it existed. If they did, they were too ashamed to even admit that they maybe had a brush with burnout. So fast forward 10 years and the year we've been through of the pandemic, and burnout's in the news every day. It's thrown around. It's a buzzword now that nobody can deny it exists, is real, and it's something that we don't want getting in the way of our success ultimately.
Definitely, I totally agree. I I often share with people my personal story of burning out, where I gave myself a year to make things happen, didn't listen to my body, all the signs of like heart, like the burning chest, being like lost in the situation, being lost, just standing there, and then spending an entire month just in bed with like the curtains closed and only coming out to eat. And this is why this subject is so dear to my heart, and the work you do, the work you both do, it is so dear to me as well.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that experience that you'd had with it yourself, because I think that makes it so much more real for people. And also some people who, although they might hear it and they recognize it's out there, they might not think it's affected them or it is affecting them. And yet sometimes we've had like these what you call micro burnouts, where things have just started going out of balance, and we end up having to maybe cancel arrangements with friends. We just want to shut the curtains and hibernate like you did, and we wouldn't really class it as a burnout, and yet it is of sorts. It's like a micro burnout, and it's those micro burnouts that we really need to watch for, isn't it?
And getting to the root cause of those micro burnouts, because if you don't, it's going to keep happening, and then eventually you'll have the big burnout. And that's not much fun for anybody.
No.
This is my story. So I had lots of little micro like burnouts, like through university. They wouldn't necessarily, they take different shapes and forms. That's where it's they kind of sneak up on us. It's a bit like quicksand almost. Like you don't necessarily see it. You don't know you're in it, and then all of a sudden you're under. And it wasn't till I'd had a complete and utter burnout when I was like 28, and a bit like but like completely confined to my bed, was like there for like 6 months. It was like, it wasn't till then that I connected the dots and realized actually I'd had plenty of little micro warnings that I ignored, and I just kept getting back on the bike and riding a million miles per hour and pretending that that everything was okay and that I could keep going that way. And I think the thing is, as year goes on, it's that cumulative effect of it's the ongoing prolonged stress essentially we're putting our system under. It's like being in that fight or flight mode all the time,
because like when we talk about stress, we think about different things that can stress us, but there's acute stress which we can deal with because we're either prepared for it or we know we're going to experience something that's stressful. But it's that chronic stress that is constantly weighing on your shoulders, and then before you know it, it's like it's pinned you down, and you can't get it off you. So it can affect anybody, and it doesn't matter what line of work you're in, or if you're a student, or if you're you're into your 50s or 60s, you can still be affected by this. And it's just being able to understand the signs and symptoms and the impact that they can have, and getting to it before it gets to you.
And what it really comes down to is taking better care of you, and being willing to put yourself first and your self-care first.
Not always ezy for the people who burn out, right?
People who burn out, like you and me, we're go-getters, we're alive.
Not me.
We want to. That's why our relationship works. When we met, I was like always like in go mode,
and I was half asleep,
and Dylan was chilled, and he kind of balanced me out. I couldn't be with another person that was like me.
That's what she says. That's what she says.
It would be a recipe for disaster though, right? Because I wouldn't have that person to like keep me in check and to keep me like, so no, just relax. It's okay to just take some time out. You don't have to be always doing something. And I think that's the key, really. It's acknowledging.
But for some people, and like you, even someone close to you can maybe see the signs and tell you that you don't necessarily accept that. Do you absorb it? And you don't necessarily want to believe it either. And you just, well, definitely in the case of you, but anybody who has that kind of drive, it almost feels like a slight on them if you say, I think you might be burning out. It's like, no, burnout wouldn't happen to me. I'm I'm invincible. I'm kind of it's not sort of thing that could affect me, but it'll catch up with everybody, I think.
I think that the people who tend to burn out tend to be very caring and overgiving, ambitious and driven, and then they almost have like a false sense of being superhuman because they've probably worked really hard, played really hard, had feedback along the way of achievements, and been acknowledged for their successes, and then they think they have to keep that bar set up here and that they can't let it drop. Like it always has to be perfect. Everything always has to reach that level that they've set for themselves, and they find it really hard to just be like, okay, for today, I'm just going to let good be good enough. That's like the biggest challenge, but it's the thing we need to bring in. Like, so I'll allow certain things to be up here. Like I'll set, it needs to be perfect. It needs to be done in a certain way, but then I'll give myself give myself some slack on other things so it balances and it's not just like always set here, because otherwise it's just not sustainable.
No, it's so true. It's so true. And I know you I know Dylan, you talked about you might get feedback from friends and family. I had two things around that. One is even friends and family was like, "Are you going crazy?" Which is never the best feedback. Yeah. Are you okay? or the second one is like people actually not really realizing what's happening, and and then you are in that kind of you're in that dark place by yourself, and it's definitely a journey of kind of self-understanding and But I also want to bring back to I love your name, founders of Balanceology, like the burnout coaching solution. Can you tell us more about how did you get to the name, and tell us more about the solution?
I think we wanted to basically, one of the things around burnout Jane talks about, you know, in her book, and just generally when you're running workshops and stuff, is the idea of balance and having that balance, like you were just talking about earlier. So we wanted to bring balance into the name of the business. We were both coaches. We wanted to explore that idea of balance as an art, as an actual way of life.
Like a bit like making a cocktail, you know, like that ology part was a bit like that mixology, you know, kind of keeping a lightness to it, because it, like you say, it's a heavy topic. We're talking about it lightly today, it can be the result of someone losing their partner, losing their job, losing their connections in their family when other people don't get it around them. It's really significant in terms of like how impactful it can be in a negative sense, but equally, as you said, it's that I do like to try and frame it for people as an opportunity to really get to know yourself and to really go there and reinvent yourself, and then be like that kind of phoenix rising from the ashes, and go forward in a new way, but in a way that then is sustainable for you. And you can still do amazing things, but just doing them in a different way and modeling what's possible to others, that is success without burnout. And so that balanceology was that really, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And being able to look at balance as not a challenge, but something that you enjoy and that you can bring into your life and work with. And it's an ongoing sort of thing. It's not something it's not one session's not going to help you become balanced. It's like a shift in the way you think.
I'm sure for you it's the same, you know. It's never ending. It's like you're constantly having to tweak, and like you maybe do a bit too much and you realize you're like, whoa, okay, that was, you know, I got a little indication there of those signs or symptoms that come up if I'm pushing it too far, and okay, I'll rebalance, you do a bit more self-care. It's like it never ends.
And it's a concept as well, because people who have burnt out, from our experience of working with those kind of people, they could be like, oh, work is the cause of the burnout. So I'm gonna do more me time, I'm gonna get into running, and then running becomes so intense that they're trying to run marathons and stuff that they're burning out from doing that. So it's the concept of balancing everything, not just replacing things with different areas and then burning out doing something different that you think is good for you.
It's so true. It's so true. And, you know, and actually I wanted to get to how you help people kind of create the solutions when they do end up that stage, because I remember for me, it was like, I remember just lying there thinking I never ever want to be in this situation again. And I need to create a toolbox of support for myself. And so I love that idea of like, it's an opportunity for you to rise like a phoenix from the ashes. Because actually, you know, at what stage do people normally come to you guys for help? Is it when they're burnt out or when they're feeling it?
Quite often it's once they've already been signed off from work with stress, or they've resigned from a job and then they've realized they can't quite get to the next thing, because they quite often, a lot of people will lose like the passion for what they were doing. Like, it's not always the case, but quite often there's a sense of resentfulness about either the industry they've been in, or the type of employer, or even just like whatever used to light them up about a certain thing. That spark's maybe not quite there anymore, and then they start to question whether that they should really go back to that thing, whether they need to change that completely. So it's usually when someone's had rest and then they've still not been able to come back, like that rubber ball's just not quite bounced back up yet, and they know they need help, because 9 times out of 10 I think we all could do with a little bit of help, and quite often people who burn out find it really hard to ask for help.
And sometimes they've explored other areas, right? They've tried other things, they haven't worked. They're kind of realizing there's more to it than just rest, or more to it than they need to change something deeper within themselves.
Because quite often it will be a bit like putting a band-aid on a wound, and it's not
plaster.
Plaster.
American on us today.
But like people will say to me, oh, I've tried acupuncture, I've tried herbal remedies, I've tried reflexology, I've tried this. But they were trying all those things in the run up to burnout, thinking that by doing this one thing, it was miraculously going to change everything for them. And none of those things will really help unless they get to the root cause and they address the issue that's under the surface. So by the stage people tend to come to us, they're ready to go beneath the surface and go deeper and really sort stuff out.
I love that. I love that because actually, both your auras is one that I can imagine. Well, already I can open up to you guys, and that's exactly what you want. Like just because, like you said, it's not just that one thing that can solve the issue. It's getting to the root causes as to why you reach that stage, and helping them to discover all the different aspects of themselves to create their toolbox, but also understand when they're reaching that kind of limit and they need to back off. And yeah, I was going to say I've got a few questions, which I've been. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing them with us. The first question I've got is, how do you avoid burnout?
Good question.
Yeah. So I think understanding what it is, so that hopefully by the end of our conversation today, people will understand more what burnout actually is. And then if they do like a kind of potted history of their own life and look at the times when you felt extremely fatigued, or there's some mysterious health issue that's presented itself, because when the stress response is being over sort of provoked all of the time, over prompted, so that fight or flight has been triggered daily, and that releases this adrenaline and cortisol into the bloodstream, which takes its toll on not just the adrenal glands but the autoimmune system, and that then affects all of the organ systems in the body. So different people will then get symptoms presenting themselves, illnesses that they don't really have any, that there'll be no, the doctors won't be able to pinpoint why.
Yeah, they can't make sense of it. Yeah.
But essentially underneath it all, it's stress related. It's that stress response that's caused that imbalance. And so when you look back through your life, if you notice, oh, I had this issue at this stage, and then a year later I had a breakup, and I kind of dipped a bit and I went into a feeling about myself that wasn't great, and then I had this other thing, and maybe it was a car accident, or because people become like clumsier, they get kind of brain fog, they can't access solutions to things, so they make mistakes, they can't retain information, they miss things, they forget to renew their house insurance, they forget to sort out their car, so things will have just kind of gone wrong, whether that was emotionally, cognitively, physically, environmentally. Like some people, their homes will have just become a state, there'll just be clutter everywhere and they won't have sorted it out, and they'll maybe just have one year where they had to totally blitz the place. And so if you kind of look at what were your signs, what were the heads up that things were out of balance, that you were kind of ignoring or neglecting, or you hadn't even appreciated until listening to us now, that was actually like a micro burnout in itself. And when you notice that you're going into those places, like your body's whispering at you, pay attention, rather than just popping, like we're very used to in this country popping pills. In the States it's more people will inject things, but it's like if you're popping kind of headache tablets to overcome headaches, and you're taking something to help you relax to go to sleep, and then you're taking caffeine in the morning to get you up, and you're drinking to escape, or you're drinking to chill yourself down, or you're dependent on all these other things because your body's basically starting to shout at you that it's needing you to listen and do things in a different way. That's essentially your body helping you. It just feels like a frustration and an irritation, and you want to just tell it to stop, but it's trying to tell you to take notice. And when we do notice those things and just course correct and make adjustments, then we can avoid it.
I love that. That's so powerful. And as you're speaking, you're just taking me through all the different emotions that people would go through, and and it's incredible how you can go into that cycle of just like different dependencies, alcohol, the medicine, other stuff. Yeah. And it can just become like a cycle that just gets faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and you just have no control over it anymore. Wow.
And the societies we live in, that exacerbates that sense of time always being sped up. Like people are just always in a rush at the moment. They're always connected in a way that they never were 10, 20, 30 years ago. We didn't have a conversation. Say we were watching something or looking at something. We didn't then have a conversation appear from a friend, and then an email from work, and then a news flash about this, that, the other. It's like your attention's constantly being dragged off to different places unless you purposefully decide to unplug from devices and take back your take back control of your time and your space around you.
And it's easy when you're stuck in that storm, it's very easy not to see outside of it and to be able to rise above it and look at what's going on. You're kind of in the moment with it, and the self-medicating, whether that's, you know, drinking or medicine or whatever, it's just suppressing what's really happening. And it's at that point when people come to you, they're like, I've tried everything, I just can't get out of this situation. And then they realize it's time for a real kind of a deep dive into what's causing the issue, because it's an acceptance of it first, I guess, that's happening to you, and then it's like, okay, I need to do something about this different than what I'm doing already.
I love this. You know what, I don't know how you guys, I'm glad you guys got each other, because like I said, it is a very heavy subject. I can imagine you guys end of the night where you kind of absorbed all this energy in it and help your clients, like, you know, and just like, just balance it out at the end of the night with a glass of wine. Maybe.
I just read positive quotes on Instagram for about an hour.
You know, and when you're talking about, you know, sometimes, you know, people might forget, things might become disorganized. I was just thinking about, I've got dyslexia and dyspraxia, so sometimes I'm like, is that burnout or is that my dyslexia and dyspraxia coming out? But another question which I received was, how do we find the balance?
Come see us.
Well, it's different for each person. But when I ask somebody, when was the last time you felt balanced? Like, they really have to usually think back and think, you know, it's normally been a while, like it. And then quite often the next question is like, you know, when did you last have a holiday? When did you last completely switch off without a phone, without a laptop, without, you know, just when did you last do that? And so many people won't have done that for so long, and they need to give themselves permission to do that, right?
Because they're so used to helping others or doing something for somebody else, whether that's in a job context or in a family relationship context. They don't feel worthy to give themselves some time off, give themselves to do something they want to do, because they might perceive that to be weak or to be not fair to the other people. And it's what guilty. They feel some guilt around it. And once they've accepted that actually they're allowed to, once they've got over whatever the root of that permission or barrier is, then they can start to think, actually, no, I deserve some balance. Everyone else got it. I deserve some too. So it's kind of getting to it. And there's often, when I work with people, there's often issues around permission, whether that's from their childhood with their parents or with their teacher or something, where they've been told off, or they've had some problem in the past where they didn't then have the confidence to give themselves permission to self-care. And that's
but the thing is, we train our children to
our children.
Society, that's why we've got a childhood today, because we train our children in society that to override being tired, to override having a headache, to override feeling a bit sick, if it's not that bad, if your arm's not hanging off, you've not got blood pouring out of your head, then you go to school. It's like, it starts there, because we're learning then as children that, oh well, I'll ignore what my body's telling me because I'm just going to get forced to go to school anyway. And then no surprise really that then when that transfers into, you know, higher education or university or the workplace, it's then, well, you just go to work and you think you've got to soldier on. And
I think sometimes there's a misconception that self-care means that you're not tough because, like, you know, you can't stick it out, but you still have a robustness and a strength within you to have self-care. It just means that, like Jane says, you're listening to your body, you're doing what's right for you, not what's right for somebody else, and then you're the barometer, the measure of, you know, what's good for you and what's not somebody else doing that for you.
And what's good for you is always, ironically, what's good for everybody else. Because we're not talking about selfish people here, selfish, self-centered, narcissistic. Those types of people aren't your usual burnout person. The person who burns out, it puts everyone else first. They're selfless, right? So it's the person who was taught to look after others before looking after you that has the biggest challenge and is the more likely to be the one that burns out. And it's such a cliche, but one of the best metaphors I've ever come across for it is on an aeroplane, the oxygen masks drop down in the event of emergency. They tell you to put it on yourself before you put it, you try and help someone else. And so I feel quite silly now, right? But I still remember the first time we were on a plane, and because we had kids with us on the plane, I took in the information it was saying. I was like, what? You put it on you? Like, well, yeah, of course you do. Because if you're not looking after you, you can't look after anyone else. So when people burn out, it is also that realization that actually all this giving to other people, when they hit that wall and they can't then actually do anything for anybody, they've undone the very thing that they were intending in the first place and being helpful. It's like they're not helpful to anybody when you're useless and burnt out.
You can't help others if you can't help yourself.
It's so true. I love that. You know, and yeah, that whole idea of people saying, I can't let anyone down. I can't let anyone down. And you end up letting people down. And, you know,
that's the irony of it. Yeah, exactly.
One of the other sides is that your calendar will book up way in advance. Like you've got like no time to yourself because you've already committed to all these things with friends, with family, for others. And but then ironically, you'll be finding yourself cancelling at the last minute on people because you just can't muster up the energy to go. And then you realize that that's actually way worse than saying, actually, no, I'm going to keep that weekend free, and people not feeling like, oh, so-and-so's coming, they're joining, they'll be here. And then they get like let down at the last minute. That's actually worse, isn't it? But it's one of those signs to watch for if you're cancelling on your friends at the last minute.
And the thing I hate about that is that it also feeds into the cycle, because then you end up feeling more guilty because you're like,
And a lot of it sometimes is that we don't, as in society, it's definitely in British society, that awkwardness to be upfront at the beginning stops us from saying what we really feel, and then we agree to something that really we never wanted to do anyway, and it's just like you say, it feeds into this cycle. But if you've worked through that and you've got the confidence and you know that by telling someone you don't want to come, it's not a slight on them, it's just that you physically don't want to go and it's not right for you at that time. But it's very hard for us to have those conversations sometimes.
It does really challenge that British politeness, for sure.
It does. You know what? I never realized actually the most powerful word I've learned is no. It's just no without an excuse.
Exactly.
And without needing to explain, it's quite a powerful thing when somebody can stand in their no and still come, like it's from a heartfelt place of no. I'm saying no for me, for you, for everyone. So this isn't good. You said about that energy thing, like about if we're absorbing stuff from other people, or if we're in your body when you're taking on someone else's stuff, because when you come away from them you feel drained, you feel zapped, like you've given a bit of yourself away. You're not necessarily aware of it when you're doing it. And that but when we work with people, that's one of the things they get really clear on, is actually noticing in their energy how they are giving bits of themselves away. And let those tools that you mentioned, like what are some of the tools that we teach, is like getting really clear on that and starting each day almost like, imagine you're a magnet and you're drawing back to you all the bits of yourself that you've scattered everywhere the day before. You play it all back, become really aware of what it feels like to have all your energy back with you, not with all these other people, and then becoming more present to noticing how you feel around other people. Because when you start to notice it more, and rather than just overriding it, it's like you'll notice certain people don't feel great to be around, certain places, jobs, and projects and things. And then when that question comes, oh, can you do this, I'm giving you that, can you have it done by tomorrow, it's about pausing in yourself, noticing and checking with how you really feel, and then honoring that feeling and being brave enough to say what you really feel in that moment, and get it out and share it.
And if it's a reasoned kind of thought through response, you should be empowered by that. If it's a reactionary response, then it's sometimes you may feel guilty after you've said it. But if you've actually thought it through, worked it through in your mind, you know that after you've said it, you've said the right thing. So that's like a comfort to you rather than I think
the more you do it, the stronger it becomes, and the more clear you are and able to just react in the moment. But sometimes in the building up to that, it's good while you're kind of a bit like having stabilizers on a bike while you're getting used to doing this in a different way.
Yeah.
Asking for time. So if somebody asks you about something, rather than jumping in and saying, oh yes, say,
which is a normal response, right? It's like, yeah, I can do that. No worries. Yeah, I'll do it.
I'd like to chat. I just need to think about this. Please come back to me in an hour, or please come back to me in a day, or ask me about it on Friday, whatever. But try and buy yourself a bit of space so that you can prepare yourself to then say the no.
But you will get a reaction that's like, oh, wasn't expecting that. They normally say yes. Yeah. But that will change the more you do it, right? So
you teach people how to do it, and I think that it takes a bit of adjusting. Like when we change within ourselves, it absolutely does change the way that other people are used to relating to us, and it can sometimes put people's noses out of joint with it when you're not showing up the willing way that you perhaps
and the way that they,
or being the doormat or whatever you were doing before, the superhero or whatever.
It just challenges their beliefs and their view of you, but people adjust.
But for the better. So,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I love this. And guys, if you're watching this, there's two things there I just want to really point out. The first one was actually this power in just saying no without having to explain. The second was about you don't have to react straight away. You don't have to give a response. Give distance. Let them know I can't. I don't. I need to check my calendar. I need to check on this. But there's also a third part of that. Is this is a story? One of my friends. He always complains because he has a friend he was asking for money. And each time he'll get angry because the friend never pays him back on time. He'll be like, James, next time you ask me, I'm not going to give him the money. And of course, each time he gives him the money. So even if he said to his friend, I need to check my bank balance. I know that friend comes back to him that same kind of environment where he always asks, he'll always end up saying, yes. So, create that distance, but then also reply in a way that makes it comfortable for you to give them that decision that is right for you at that time. So it could be a text message, email.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a great story.
Yeah. And it happens more than you realize in different situations. And I think sometimes it is for the other person who's asking for the money or asking for a favor. It's then the realization that, oh wow, they've actually said no now, or they're not just answering straight away, and they're less likely then to think they can keep getting away with asking you to do stuff. So it will change the dynamic eventually, and that's
But again, for the better, because otherwise you're building resentment.
Yeah, because you don't. You don't want resentment towards a friend. And I think sometimes we expect people to react how we would react in that situation, and we're not all wired the same way. So they're not hearing the same things or picking up on the same cues. So you have to be more direct sometimes. Yeah. It's
so true. And that's also another societal thing here. We've mentioned it before, where we're not as forthcoming with our thoughts, and that creates kind of that misalignment in expectations, where those expectations aren't verbalized, and then when people don't meet those expectations, we become more angry.
and it's awkward for everybody then.
It's a lot of what I do when I work with businesses is about making things explicit, like really detailing stuff and getting it above and out, and so that everybody's clear, because otherwise so much goes on in unspoken, implicit ways, and it can create really toxic work cultures as well when that's happening, because people don't feel that there's clear expectations, clear boundaries. They start questioning themselves.
And because there's often not an atmosphere created where people feel like they can question something or ask, often what they would perceive to be a silly question, but it's not. It's a question that maybe a lot of people were thinking, I don't really get this, but I don't want to put my hand up and ask. If you, like Jane says, if you go into an organization, you can change that culture where there's a more open sharing culture and people then feel comfortable to ask. There's less of this kind of like stuff hanging in the air, the unsaid, the unknown, the unspoken, and it's helpful for that.
It so is. And the funny thing is, once again about society not preparing for life, is often people think by not being that person that speaks out is kind of safe. But the reality is actually it's easy to stand out from a crowd, and it's often the people who can kind of verbalize stuff, who can say, we have an issue with this part of the business, we need to fix it. Those are the ones who are kind of more respected by the management. But it's a skill to understand how to deliver those messages without getting like that slap on the wrist.
Yeah. And if it's not normal for you to do that, you may feel awkward doing it to start with. But there may be someone in the business, like you say, there's people there who just have a confidence and a comfortable kind of way of delivering or asking questions, delivering news. But I think the root of it is always authenticity. If it's coming from an authentic place, then it will ultimately be respected, I think.
Absolutely. And sometimes about practicing in another setting and gaining confidence. I think confidence comes when we take a step and an action, and then it grows once we start putting ourselves out there that little bit more, being a shade braver each time. And sometimes, again, with like coaching, that's a place where that can really support and help, is to rehearse having those difficult, uncomfortable conversations that are your version of putting yourself out there with somebody else, like rehearsing it almost like an actor before they go on a stage. You know, they'll have rehearsed their lines. They won't just have depended on that moment to just show up and get it right. So I think
I've done whole sessions with people where it's just literally like a role play where you're going through this so like specific scenario, and I'm taking on the role of the boss. I love that. I get into that. The boss is very nice. I can do that. I can do the not nice boss thing. But it really works. You know, over the course of an hour, maybe a couple of sessions, like Jane says, that practice, and you throw little grenades over just to put them off as well. And then, so when it comes to the real thing, it's actually they've gone through. So easy. They've gone through something that's actually more difficult than the real thing.
It's so true. It's so true. I love that. I love actually that whole practice element and rehearsing it, and then you're prepared for that element to deliver that. Because we have so many people. I've got a friend who's like, she knew what she wanted to say to her boss, and she'd practice that. She goes, I know what I'm going to say. Ask her 2 months down the line if you said it yet. No, I haven't booked in a meeting yet.
People who resign sometimes they hold off from resigning because they don't dare have the conversation or write the letter.
But it's worth doing with someone that I think, and if you can't, even if you set up a space with a couple of chairs and you put a kind of a cushion in one that represents your boss, and then physically go and sit down in the other chair and like really make it as real as you can, rather than it just being in your head, and notice when you sit down in the chair opposite that person how you feel in your body. Really try and bring the practicing into your body so it feels really real, because then it affects your subconscious in a deeper, like it affects your subconscious, so it's a deeper level of preparation that your body then recognizes and feels like it's really been there before. It's not just all up here in the headspace. So I'll suggest that to your friend. Yeah.
See, guys, are you hearing this? Because that's a really important tip that Jane's given us, and because we often live in our fear, so false expectations appearing real, and being able to kind of practice it in a situation that kind of, even with a friend. so then I'm going to contact you when I need to have my next tough conversation.
I'm right here.
Even with a friend, or like Jane said, having a pillow on a chair, so like at least you can really be in that mode whilst you're practicing it, because then it's just like creating that momentum, because often it's about momentum to help you to unlock that door.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it can be quite interesting for people if they do that chair exercise, and in earnest, it really does work. To take, once you've done it, you've sat in the chair, you've expressed what you wanted to express to, say, the boss or whoever it is you're having that difficult conversation with, then switch and sit in the chair as your boss, receiving the information, and notice what your boss feels in relation to you. Notice how they are perceiving you. What information can you get that you were missing, that you didn't notice? And then shake that person off, because you don't want to stay being your boss for the rest of the day. Then step outside, away from the two chairs, as an observer, and notice what you notice. If you replay it as if you're watching it like a movie, how were you presenting yourself? What was the boss perceiving? Watching it from that other perspective. And then, is there something you would change? Would you do it differently if you had a take two? Like, go back in the chair, do it again. Like, that can also like a build on, if that's of help, which I hope it will be.
Oh, that is such
yeah.
I was gonna say that is such a massive help, because we're all in our bubble. Like, when we're going through this situation, it's from our stance. Like, I'm angry, I hate this. You've upset me. But when you do what you just said, you can actually see a different perspective of things, and it might be like, oh, and once you do that, it changes the whole conversation. It might be rather than you say you've done me wrong, you might be like, oh, what's up? Are you okay? I noticed that you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that perspective really, really helps give you more comfort in what you're going to do, because you've looked at it from different angles, and I think then you feel more prepared, right? Then then thinking about it afterwards.
Yeah, can sometimes disarm that, like you said, that false expectation appearing real. It's like it can disarm that perception you have of this big, angry, scary person. You see them as more human, and actually you get more comfortable with being vulnerable in yourself, because you realize actually there's a vulnerability about everybody. We're all human, and so sometimes it can just help make the big scary monsters not seem so scary as well.
I agree, especially because sometimes we get to that mood where we're like, that person just is evil, and you're like, but like that person is like, most people, almost 99% of people don't get out of bed saying, I'm gonna destroy someone else's day, I'm gonna rip someone off. So doing this exercise that you just taught us enables us to, like you said, to like remove that kind of mask we've put on that person and see them as human.
Yeah, exactly. And often what we create in our head is much worse than what the reality of the situation is. So yeah, it probably is. Sorry, our dog's just he's a great balance coach as well.
I love that. I've got a few more questions here. So how can you differentiate a stress or a burnout? Thanks, guys, for answering the questions.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. So basically, burnout is ongoing stress. So so you might perceive a situation as with a more heightened stress response. Like some people, when they're burning out, they'll experience, say, for example, panic attacks, and other people will get actual feelings in their heart that don't feel normal, and yet when they go and have them checked out, the ECG throws up nothing abnormal. It's just but that heightened state of stress. So burnout, as I say, like there's it shows up differently for different people and different people's experiences of it. You can sometimes be like almost like somebody's completely pulled out your plug and you're so fatigued that you can't get out of bed. Like when you said, other people will go into depression, some people it will be like vertigo, like everything's spinning, and so stress it's lots of experiences of stress that then lumped together to create the burnout, which could be any number of sort of bigger bang type experiences. So sometimes it's a stroke, it's a heart attack, it's
I mean, I think we see it a lot now that people are, because of the different stresses in their life, work, money, family, relationships, whatever it is, they're in this chronic constant state of chronic stress, so they're not being alleviated from it. But for one person, a stress might just be everything else might be fine in their life, and they just might have this one bill they've got to pay this month and they're stressed about that, and then once that's done, they sort of balance out.
Calms down.
It calms down. But it's when I've had jobs in the past before as a coach where the stress of the job just followed me home and stayed with me, and I didn't really even know I was thinking about it, but it was like a weight on my shoulders. And it wasn't until I left that job I was like, the headaches have gone, the feelings gone, and it was that job that was causing it, but it was just carrying it around all the time, and that's what leads to eventually to a burnout.
I think it goes back to that bit that we touched on before about recognizing when you feel balanced and what that feels like. So that might be if you were to sort of kind of close your eyes and imagine yourself lying on a beach or standing in a forest, or is there a go-to that your stress system calms down and you feel that sense of balance in yourself? Then notice, when are you out of alignment with that, and how often is that happening? You could journaling is not journaling as in writing down your thoughts and feelings, although that has its place and can be helpful for people, but keeping a journal, like a calendar, like a note on like Dylan said, like the headaches, he hadn't really appreciated they'd become part and parcel of the job. There was a underlying stress there that he had almost got so used to, he was ignoring, that was there running in the background. So that was, you know, he was stressed every day. There wasn't like a heightened like response, but it was just in the background, like a kind of dull.
The bad thing was, James, is I didn't have a burnout expert to go to, so I just had to do it myself.
I like your style. So you married one as well. So now you're safe, man.
But I've worked with a client before, and as the sessions have gone on, it was like every session, it was like one other thing. It was like, oh, I'm stressed out by work. I'm stressed because my finances aren't good. And when we sort of unpicked it, the real thing that was causing all of the stress was being disorganized. That person wasn't organized and didn't have a grip of all these different areas. And it wasn't until they realized they actually kind of faced the fear of them all and said, like, okay, my finances aren't great, but I have got no idea what I'm spending and what's coming in, to be honest. Once they started looking at it and they felt that they had control of it and they were empowered by it, the stress level started to come down because all the worry about it had gone, because they didn't need to worry about it so much because they could see it black and white in front of them by listing it, by putting it in a spreadsheet and realizing, okay, this is where my finances are, this is how I need to improve them. They had a process and a method to get out of it, and it takes time, but just having control of it just instantly brought the levels down a bit. And I think, you know, for some people, all of that stress coming in at them from different angles, but they don't know what it is and they're not in control of it, just by controlling it can help a little bit.
This is so powerful. This is so powerful, guys. This feels like an MBA lesson that we've had, and you know, honestly, and you know, and I love the whole aspect of kind of, you know, really understanding yourself and the history, and you know, we all have disempowering beliefs and also empowering beliefs, and you know, a lot of the work we're focused on is actually how can we empower you as an individual to take ownership of the situation that is causing you the stress and the burnout. And, you know, rather than thinking about the holistic thing, even think about the mini steps to take. I love this.
Things down and we focus just on the smallest step we could take. That then feels so much more doable. Otherwise, like you said about that cycle, you can just go straight back into overwhelm.
And actually, what's stressing you is the fear of everything, not the individual parts. Yeah. And like Jane says, you take that first step, you're dealing with something, right? Yeah. And you're that first step is the first rung of the ladder out of the whole of burnout, you know, out of, you know, possible burnout. Yeah.
And acknowledging those sort of successes when you've taken them, when people are transitioning back to work or back to life in a more engaged and alive way after burnout, quite often if they've got old patterns of being quite critical and looking at the bits that are not working and try to fix those, they need to almost then learn to look at what's going really well now, what's balanced, and appreciating that and giving themselves a pat on the back for that being there and that outweighing the need to go to fixing the broken bit.
Because gratitude is like a real powerful tool, right? And and I think like one thing's not going to work for another person. It's got to resonate with you. It's got to be authentic to you and genuine to you, that you want to buy into doing whatever's going to help you. So some people might find meditation, and you might be fixated and think, well, that's working for them, why isn't it working for me? If you're not on board with it, it's not going to work. But you will find something that works for you. It could just be a walk a day. It could just be some time with friends that you haven't seen. But it's personal to you. And if you can find those things that really work for you and not worry about what works for other people, that can really help as well.
Ooh, powerful. I love that. Find what works for you. You know, and also when you talk about a timeline and everything we talked about, you remind me of my favorite saying is, that someone told me the other day, it's we need to find a way to we live in our shade or live in our light. So the shade are kind of the things that sap your energy, the things that kind of demotivate you. The light is the stuff that you love doing, that, you know, brings a smile on your face, and is about, you know, creating a life that you spend as much time in your light as possible. You know?
Exactly. And you're entitled to that. You deserve that. So
that's good for everybody, because that's infectious.
yeah,
That type of energy makes everybody around you feel good, right? We'd light up the world if everybody did that, wouldn't we? And we'd step out so much of
well, you know, when you meet somebody like in the street, or you bump into someone and it's been like a really light, energetic conversation or something, you'll go back home and tell somebody about it, or you'll think, oh God, that was really nice. And it's that small thing that's just, you know, it's there's never any bad to come from it, really.
No, in fact, the kind of the actual solution, so like the burnout solution, the opposite of stress isn't actually calm. The opposite of stress is kindness. And so that was David Hamilton, who, I don't know if you're aware of David Hamilton. He's an amazing man. He's done a lot on the power of the mind and body and the connection between the two, and he's done lots of studies, and he's a massive believer in kindness, like small acts of kindness, but not from the overgiving burnout type stance, but from a genuine place of, I'm doing this either for myself, like care for myself, or care for another, but those sort of small random acts of kindness, you know, you just smile at somebody just because you feel good.
He said the easiest way to be kind every day for him was when he's driving, because usually when you're driving, you're kind of in a hurry to get somebody. But if I just let somebody out, that's helped them, I feel good about it, they're happy, you've let them out in traffic. And it's like so easy to do something like that. And that, you know, actually, I think, you know, you
can't be stressed when
your body, like actually,
like
so the feeling of the endorphins or whatever's released from that overpower any kind of stress that you would have had. So it sounds, you know, oh, just be kind and you'll be fine. But just try to be more kind, like whatever kindness is to you, just do more of it.
No, it's so true, and you know, it's funny when, as you guys are talking about that, it reminds me of Eddie Murphy in that film when he comes out and goes, "Good morning, everybody." And then they're like, "F you," and it's like, "F you too."
Exactly. Nothing's going to stop him from being happy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have hopefully we have time for one last question, and then I'll round up. I've got two questions here, but because in a workplace, how can you handle burnout, which is the first question, and the second question is why can't you just log off instantly when we are at work, and what can we do to handle it? So it's up to you what question you'd like to take.
So maybe the second one first, actually.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So I guess my question back to that person would be, what's coming up in you? What's the little inner gremlin saying when you're finding that you can't just log off? What's it telling you? Is it saying, oh, just one more email? Or is it telling you everyone else is still here, so I still need to be here? Or what's going on there? And just challenge that with kindness.
Because even for like, so for an example, when Jane burnt out, she was working, you were teaching at the time, right? Yeah. And she was working right the way through to like 11, 12 o'clock. And the motivation for that, when I sort of talked about it years later, we talked about it, was that her inner mantra was like, she wanted to give her best to everything she did. And, you know, in that moment when you're trying to log off and if you have that little conversation with yourself, like, but I just want to give my best, even though that's like a really earnest kind of thing to be doing, you still need to step back from it. You still need to say, like, you know, by me staying later and giving my best, I'm not actually giving my best then, because tomorrow I'm going to be tired and it's going to have this knock-on effect. So something even that seems to be positive in your mind, you still need to give yourself some slack on. Like,
definitely. There's a model that I sometimes share with people that I learned when I did my economics degree, which is it was
got an economics degree. Drop it, sprinkle it in there. Yeah, I have it.
That's the only thing I can remember of my economics degree. It was a graph that showed when producers are producing something, it's like basically like a mountain. It looked like a mountain with an axis. Okay, you can visualize an axis with a mountain, and where the mountain starts to go up, whether that's like a farmer putting fertilizer on his field, or whether that's you putting time and energy into whatever it is you're working on, there's positive gains in that sort of first part as you're going up the mountain. Then it plateaus out. If you keep putting fertilizer on the field, you keep giving your time and energy to something, it's like there's very small incremental gains that might be had, but it basically starts to plateau out. And if you keep putting more fertilizer on, you keep spending too much more time going above and beyond, it then sharply starts to drop off, so you kind of fall off the other end of the mountain. And the point on that where the people who are most successful stop is before that bit where it starts to go up the mountain. It's like they know, right, we call it a day now. It's like going to a really good party and deciding to leave because you're in that, oh, this is so good, I'm having such a good time, I'm going to leave now on a high, versus
No one ever does.
Keep drinking, you know, then you wake up the next morning, you got this terrible hangover, you can't remember.
I do.
or you're in that stage where, oh, this is shit, why did I stay? It's like,
Language.
so just like quit when the going's really, like, step away when it's really, when you're in your prime and it's good, and then come out of it, rather than keeping going and at your detriment, at the detriment of the crops. You'll just destroy the yield you otherwise would have been able to harvest.
Oh, I love this. That was fantastic. And you know, and what we call our community, our young people now, are success seekers. So you know, they're really trying to harvest their success. So this has been fantastic. And I also wanted to just end our conversation by saying, although I was burnt out, I feel like that burnout was a gift in some ways. A gift for myself because it enabled me to kind of understand the package of support I need, but then also it's enabled me to understand when people are facing that as well. So even in the workplace, when we have members of the team who might react in a way that you wouldn't expect, like angrily, or like, or may not turn on the cameras because they just don't want to be social anymore. I can start to see the signs. And, what I feel from our conversation today is that we have given gifts to everyone who's watching it, whether that's someone who's suffering at the moment from the signs of stress and burnout, to the person who's not, but who might have someone in their families that they may not recognize those signs. And, I'm really grateful for you guys for doing this. Any comments, any final words before I go to another segment?
Just take it easy, be good to yourself, and look after you, and then you'll be able to look after others too.
Definitely.
I love that. Thank you guys so much. And actually, in the words of Dylan, get to it before it gets you, when it comes to burnout and stress. Now, guys, I'm just going to kind of share my screen just to share with you the upcoming events that we have coming in. So on the 16th of November, I also, once again, thank you to our guests, Jane, Morris, and Dylan. Woo! Thank you very much. All right, guys. So the upcoming events for November are this. On the 16th of November, we've got our Speed Mentoring event with Fitch, who are an amazing, who are the world's third largest ratings agency. Then on the 23rd of November, we've got How to Get a Job in Investment Banking. We have not only got people like senior leaders in investment banking, we've also got about 9 young people who have just recently, 5 have recently got graduate schemes in investment banks, and 4 of them secured internships. And they will all be taking part in the Speed Mention segment. Then after that, we've got a mock interview sessions with Amdocs, which are a fast growth, exciting technology business. And then if also you're looking to get a job, we've got our every last Wednesday of the month, we've got our Getting Hired series with Mag, who is a recruiter. We've got several recruiters with him who'll be going through your CV. And then of course, we've got our Thursday live sessions with some amazing guests like we've had today. And guys, we've got our Success Seekers program. So if you haven't signed up to it, I don't know what you're waiting for. I just want to say from myself, from Jane, from Dylan, from the team at Generation Success, thank you so much for being part of such a powerful live session. Take care, have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.